Hello, hello, hello. What ho? Welcome back to another exciting adventure of Red Hen Radio. It has been, as we all say in the biz, a hot
Minute.
no, not
Year.
even that. It's been a hot 2 years.
Yeah.
When was the last time we talked, Daniel?
Yeah, it has been almost 2 years,
It's
hasn't
been
it?
crazy.
It's crazy.
It's been
Wow.
crazy. But you know what? Every once in a while, when I can, like today, when you went live, I jumped in and out with my one channel that I'm on primarily, and then I went to Red Hen Radio and said hello. I put you on both channels. I went to my community page
I saw
and
that.
shared.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
man. I really
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah. So
That was
okay,
cool.
so let's jump right into that and say how you felt about today's premiere.
I was shocked. There were like 20 people in there. That was amazing. I
Which is
didn't
what?
really.
Which is what? Hold on now. That's like 4 times as much as was in your live show, right?
Which
No,
one?
I remember one of your live shows. I think you said there was like 5 people there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
we got 4 times as much.
Yeah, it's grown. It's grown a lot. I didn't promote it like at all, and the premiere did way better than I thought it would. There were a bunch of people in the chat, and it was fun talking to them, and some of them were like asking questions and stuff, and it was very, um, I guess, validating or gratifying to see so many people engaging with something that I've, put a lot of time and effort into, and that I'm really proud of. So it was really cool. And thanks for joining, by the way. That was
I could only join for a little bit, but I did when I could. So it was actually right at the end. I'm a truck driver for anyone who isn't aware, and so I was actually right at the end of my shift. So I was
oh
coming in.
wow.
I was coming into the yard to park the truck at the end of the day, and you just came on live, and so I jumped in there, and both channels flip flop back and forth. Jumped into one, jumped into the other, said hello, blah blah blah. But yeah, you know what's funny is I on today's route I listened to your entire album again,
Holy
and
crap,
so
man.
well,
That's awesome.
yeah, that's what I do when I drive. I listen to stuff that keeps me occupied while I'm on the road, and yeah. So okay, let's see. Where do I want to go from here? Um, so let's go back to your uh, latest live show, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about, or you mentioned a little bit of the excitement of having someone out in the crowd singing along with you,
Sure, sure. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. And that was a cover song. Am I right?
Yes, that was which one was it? Phoebe Bridgers, I think. I know the end. Yeah, it was amazing. It was surreal actually. It was that was my first like okay, so up until this point I've played a festival. I might have actually played two festivals. I've played backup for my friend Hunter a couple of times at
Yeah.
some bars and a couple venues, and then I've played some shorter shows, most of which were like unpaid and just for the experience and exposure and whatnot. This gig that I just did was the first paid gig, and it was 4 hours long, and I
That's
played
amazing.
like 70 songs. It was yeah, it was.
And you didn't break.
I did not. I was supposed to. I was supposed to take at least one break, but I was
Now,
just
was
in the
that
zone.
just simply to give you an opportunity to rest your vocal cords and drink some water,
Yeah,
or yeah, and
I think
you're
so.
like I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't they told me beforehand that I could stop. And my friend Hunter has played the venue multiple times before, and he normally takes like a couple breaks. I think one every hour. But I don't know. I was just very excited,
Yeah,
and
you were trooping
yeah,
through.
yeah, it was fun. It was
You're
really
like,
fun.
okay, so here's the thing now. For the next for every other show after this, you can't take a break again because otherwise you're gonna go backwards.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Sure.
You got to, and now you can't just do four. You've got to do 4 1/4, 4.5, 5. You just got to keep. You've actually signed yourself over to a death sentence.
That's
Four
exciting.
more
That's exciting.
hours. That's what people are
Let's
going to
do
be
it.
saying. They're going to be saying 4 more hours.
I hope. Let's hope so. You know, you
Yeah,
know, maybe
yeah.
maybe in 10 years, I'll be like, oh, not another 4 hours, but right now, 4 more hours sounds like a
Nirvana.
dream. Let's
Sounds
do
like
it. Yeah,
Nirvana. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. That's awesome. So let's just stay right there in terms of that venue. What are some other things in that venue that stand out for you?
Um, let's see. Well, one thing that stood out is that they invited me back multiple times. I'm really excited about this
That's fantastic.
opportunity. Yeah, yeah, it's super cool. The venue's awesome. It was a winery that's like 2.5 hours away from us, up in like the mountains. um, and there was a cool like there were a lot of different types of people there. You know, like there were older people, younger people. So like I play cover songs of older music and newer music. So it worked well, and I was able to like get give something to everybody, something that they knew.
Right.
Hopefully,
That's awesome. So one thing that, like, for me, I was given a guitar in my freshman year of college, and I never, ever, 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 in my opinion, got good. I could I could learn a song,
okay.
but I don't think for me I have the muse. Like for me, like if I were talking to somebody and they were like, "Yeah, man, I play guitar, blah blah blah," I'm like, "Yeah, I know how to play." They're like, "Oh, you should come over and jam with us." I'm like, no, you don't want. Like, I could never riff. I
Sure.
could never like speak the language of music. So
Um,
for you, it seems that
hmm,
though you have that antenna, you have that tune where you're able to speak the language of music. Because if anyone, okay, so let's see, you're the only engineer of your album.
yes, of the last two. The first one I had a
Yeah.
little bit of help on a couple
Okay,
tracks,
that's
but the
fine.
last two,
Sure,
yeah,
that's fine.
yeah,
But let's say just this last album, you engineered
yes,
everything. Yeah. So to me, you've got the muse. You've got the
okay,
ability to hear. You've got the ability to think. It's like, someone says it's one thing to learn German, but when you dream in German, then you know the language.
okay. Hmm. I will say that I believe that the antenna or the muse or um the ability to kind of know what you're looking for or be able to make stuff up or jam or whatever is something that I definitely had to cultivate it. It was not like I don't feel that it was innately there. It like grew from listening to music all the time and just practicing and experimenting all the time to until you get to a point where some stuff is just familiar to you to the point where you can just kind of do it, you know? And I'm still really not that, like, I can play a lot of basic chords on guitar, and I think in the engineer wise, like, I know what I want when I'm making a song, so I can layer stuff to make it sound almost more complex than it actually is. But I'm still would consider myself a lower level intermediate guitar player. I'm still learning a lot, but it's fun. It's like I would encourage like anybody to try to play an instrument. Like
Oh yeah, sure.
it's hard, but it's fun. And
Yeah,
once
no
you
doubt, no
get
doubt, for
yeah,
for sure. So for me, I think I'd like to say that I'm not equipped, although I will say I'm absolutely lazy.
I
So,
am too. So
so well, yeah, but see, I think that you're equipped.
mm,
So for me,
mm,
I practiced. I would practice a song and learn a song. I would look at the chords, practice the chords. No crazy. Like, I hate bar chords. Bar chords to me, like, I'm just like, how in the hell
yeah, they
does
suck.
anyone do that? Like, the finger strength for that. Anyway, um, but so for me, I would think that I'm 80% lazy and 20% equipped.
Mm.
And I can't remember the last time I picked up a guitar. Uh, I left my guitar with my mother, said, give it to my nephews. They play. If they want to use it, they can play it. But so
That was nice.
uh, with your album, I want to say that today when I was listening, at least for the first two or three, I don't remember a drum fill. And then I remember picking up on the drum fill afterwards. So how much of your engineering is synthesized and how much of it is you playing the physical instrument?
Anytime you hear drums, it's synthesized. Like I'll play it like on a keyboard. You know, like you can program the different
Yep.
sounds into different notes, and then if you hit it harder, it plays it louder. Or if you play it really softly, then it's like a muted. You know, as if you had like what do you have on drums? I recently actually had the privilege of playing drums for like the first time at Diamond Studios, and that was really interesting and fun. But anyway, so yeah, the drums are synthesized. Let's see. The guitar obviously is not. The vocals aren't. The bass isn't. Most of the piano is, keyboard. I think um, on the second. Are we talking about just the last record, or
Yeah, because that was the one that I listened to today. So as
okay?
I was listening, I felt like the first, and I'll just say the first two, I felt
Okay,
like was just acoustic. And then, at least in the third or fourth song, I remember then hearing other instrumentation.
okay,
And so then I was wondering, oh, I wonder if he's messing around with physical instruments or if he's just manufacturing this. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me because the one song that I was listening to that had a drum fill and a hi-hat fill, I could hear the hi-hat and I was like, man, that's really interesting if he's, obviously synthesizers have been around for, 60 years. But that was just a question that I had: is whether or not
sure,
how much of the track was physical and how much of it. Again, it's not a criticism; it's just a
sure.
curiosity.
Yeah, I totally understand. Uh, hmm. I'm. I wish I knew which track you were referring to, and then I could give you more information about like the actual process of creating it. Because um, I know that like on the older stuff that I made, I've used like um a drum preset thing, and then like messed with it a lot to make it like unique or whatever. But there was still like a bass thing there before I started messing with it. But here on the newest album, most of it is unique, like completely unique and built from the ground up or whatever. But yeah, there's also it's very subtle, but there are actually drums on the second track on
Okay,
Lightning in a Bottle.
I might have missed it. Okay.
It's like it's just at the beginning, really. It was originally there was a lot more emphasis on them, and my mom listened to the song and she said that it sounded like too poppy and the drums were like overpowering everything else. So I like listened back to it and decided she's kind of right. It does sound better being more acoustic. It sounds more warm and it works better for like the feel I was trying to go for. So I just turned the drums way down and then put like a filter on them to make them and like I like EQ'd them so that they were like far apart in the actual headspace if you have headphones on or surround sound or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it worked well, but yeah,
Do
it's very
you
super subtle.
do you geek out on those technicalities of trying to manipulate the stereo?
Um, I enjoy experimenting. I don't know if I'd call it geeking out because I don't know like the right terms for any of it, and half the time I have no idea what I'm doing. I just know what I'm looking for, and so I'll sit there for could be hours, of trying to get whatever it is to sound right or to do whatever it is I'm trying to get it to do. I do like stereo sound is very cool to me, or surround sound, or the ability to like have something like on Make or Write. There's like one guitar playing chords in
Yeah.
one side, and then
Yeah.
there's another guitar playing like little melodies or little
Yeah.
riffs
Yep.
in the
Yep.
other side, and doing stuff like
That's what
that's
I'm
very
talking
fun.
about. That's what I'm talking about in terms of having the muse.
Mm,
If you can think on that level, if you can get into that space of being able to think in that language, I think that that makes you a muse, a musician. That I don't have that. Like I could never. I don't think that I could ever practice guitar enough that I could actually just absolutely just riff
mm.
and improvise. I don't think I could. I don't know if that's because somebody would say, well, if you practice enough, Travis, if you put enough work in, Travis, it's like, I could never be a professional whatever. Like, no, you could. You just haven't put the work in. That might be a fair enough criticism, but at the same time, I think that there actually is a gene, a genetic disposition for some people to just, that's just their world,
Hmm.
you
I don't
know?
know, but maybe I don't know. I will.
I think that you do have a um, a proclivity. I think that you do have the ability to speak that language
Well,
based on what you've put out, right? I mean, like, look,
yeah. I
yeah,
guess I'll just say thank you for
sure,
I greatly appreciate that. Yeah. Um. Hmm. It's interesting. It is interesting to to have grown an ear for that, I guess, and to make it to a point where you can put stuff together and kind of know what it is that you're looking for and what you're trying to do. I will say that I think the ability to do that, the specific thing we were just talking about, the layering of different sounds or the playing notes within the chord on one side and the other or whatever, came a lot from listening to music in like other people's music where I was actively listening for the layering, and then I would go on to my editing software and try to like figure out what they were doing or copy what they were doing in some way. This was before I started making my own music. This was back when I first got the software and was still figuring it out. There was like a year of time where I was just making nonsense before I ever tried to put together Mania Machinations and then everything that came after that. I actually made like three albums of music that will never see the light of day, and that sucked so
yeah.
bad.
Why? Okay, so why won't they?
Well, one of the biggest issues with them was vocals. I didn't know how to sing at all. Like it's like painful, and not in the same way that like when I listen to Daniel Johnston or Hobo Johnson and the Lovemakers, and their vocals are like very unique and maybe not like the most perfect you could possibly imagine or whatever, or even somebody like Bob Dylan, even they
Yeah.
um there's a lot of like emotional potency in what they're doing. There's a lot of lyrical um, genius really being shown. There's a lot of other things to focus on. With my old stuff, the lyrics were cringy and the vocals were so incredibly off key that if I go back and listen, I really can't go back and listen to it. It's so bad. Um, and some of the musical compositions I go back and listen to and think they're kind of cool, but then a lot of other ones are super simple and just, I don't know, like feel like I just don't really like any of it. There's one or two that I might go back and steal from in the future. Um, and there actually was at least two songs that I have repurposed on albums. One of those being on the very first album I ever released, Mania Machinations. There was a song called what was it called? Yellow Blurry Wallpaper. That was a messed up song. Yeah, super emotionally potent song. And that's the only old recording that will ever make it onto an album. That was actually recorded almost a year before that album was put together, and I just kind of re-listened to it and was like, this works and this needs to be on something. So I kind of threw it on
Okay,
there.
so how did you decide that that worked? How did you decide that that is going to move forward for you?
Um, the content, the lyrical content, and um, the vocals, while still being really bad for that song in particular, they felt like they almost served the song. They served the purpose that I was trying to use for them. And so in that case, I would say that whatever I was trying to accomplish back when I was 15 or whatever worked, and I was able to um, do whatever it was I was trying to do. Another issue with my older stuff is the recording quality is really, really bad. Like I didn't have this microphone. I didn't have any real equipment. I remember I was making some stuff in Audacity before I was able. I like saved up for a few months to be able to get FL Studio, which is the software I currently use. But yeah, Audacity is a free editing or audio editing software,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, for this song though, the low fidelity quality of it almost added charm to it, where on other songs it made it abrasive and almost unlistenable. For this one, I remember I put some like uh, thunder in the background, like I recorded it raining outside and put them with the song, and it like added ambience to it and warmth to it, and it yeah, the whole thing ended up coming together really well. But aside from that, I've been rambling for this on
No,
this one
no,
too
not
long.
at
But
all. No, no,
aside from
it's not
that,
rambling. We're hanging on every word.
the first, I guess three albums that I made are hot garbage. But I did learn a lot. I learned a ton. Like that I would not have been able to do something like Mania Machinations if it wasn't for those records. I also don't think I ever would have been able to release music at all if it wasn't for artists like, let's see, I mentioned Hobo Johnson already. Who else? Oh yeah, Car Seat Headrest. There's a few artists that do this thing where they will release demos of their stuff, or they don't care if it sounds like it's low fidelity. It's almost like this garage rock or very super indie rock type of thing. And that sort of fearlessness in being able to be ambitious without worrying about, without worrying too much about, do I have enough money to do this? Do I have equipment to do this? Do I have the ability to do? On the first album, I actually recorded some of the drum sounds by like hitting pots, like you got to be creative, and creativity works within art, and
Yeah,
makes it more interesting. And so bands that have or groups or artists that have the courage to do stuff like that and really not care what people think and just keep growing and saying what they want to say and not giving a damn. That was very inspirational to me, and definitely helped with getting over anxiety towards publishing my own stuff, and also taught me a lot about how to make something that's low fidelity or low quality sound listenable still, or interesting still. Anyways.
So how do you interact with the comments that you see, positive, negative, constructive, deconstructive? Let's start there, but then also, have you had any criticism from, I suppose, what would be considered someone who's in the business, someone who's in the field, so to speak, rather than just simply someone like me who would say, "Oh, you sound like wah, wah, wah," just a keyboard warrior, So on the one hand, tell us how you respond to and appreciate or evaluate just comments from keyboard warriors, and then follow up with, have you been able to find in the comments or someone who shared it with someone who knew someone who said, "Hey, check this guy out," if you've had anybody come in and say, "Hey, you've got something good. Have you thought about this?
Hmm. Um, let's see. I'll start I'll start with the first question. The for comments. Uh, the comments are a weird. Engaging with feedback on my stuff is a very weird beast to tangle with, because on one hand I want to. I'm a kind of a person that like can go to extremes kind of and like stay in extremes and has trouble finding balance or a middle ground, which is something I'm constantly trying to work on. But on one hand I want to really engage with everything people say about my stuff. You know, it means the world to me that someone's engaging with something that I put, you know, time and effort into. And a lot of times there's some level of ego involved too, where it's like I'm writing about myself or things that have happened to me or like life events or whatever in a lot of these songs, and other people are relating to it or engaging with it, and I feel like my whatever is being validated or understood on some level, and it's like, yay, you know. So I want to interact with everything, but at the same time I could read 10 positive comments and then one negative comment, and the one negative comment stays with me for like a week, you know. Like sometimes I'm afraid to look at the feedback that something gets, and it is interesting to see how people engage with it. Since I've been online, I have learned a lot about how people interact online, because there's very little filter. Obviously, like platforms themselves have filters, like they'll censor things or remove comments or whatever. But people, or a lot of people, don't have a filter, because most people who comment or engage with stuff are not putting their real name out there. They're not like putting they're anonymous. You know, when you're anonymous, you can do or say whatever you want. So when I first started making videos on YouTube, I was very naive and did not really understand how to just take things with a grain of salt and not let things affect me. And it kind of over time has I've developed thicker skin, if you will. Um, but also over time, like the people who support my stuff has grown a lot. Like when I first was doing this, there were like on that channel, when I was making role playing game content, there were like 3 dedicated haters who were wasting ridiculous amounts of time hating on my stuff, and then there were like 3 or 4 people who would like watch 2 minutes of a video and then be like, "Oh, it's kind of cool," and then move on. Where now, if I upload a song, there's 4 or 5 people who seem to comment under everything that I do, and whether it's a positive or a negative thing, I like appreciate them and like almost feel like, while I don't know them yet and they're not really like, I guess some of them are friends at this point, but you know, I don't know them in real life. I still feel very connected with the community that's grown around this stuff, and the fact that there is a sense of community is one of the greatest. It gives me one of the greatest senses of achievement ever. Like, it's so surreal that there's a community around this nonsense that I'm throwing out into the void on YouTube as a teenager with a camera and a microphone. But then I guess with negative stuff, like I was saying, used to be more difficult for me to handle it. Now it's kind of just
how do
whatever.
you wade through positive negative and negative negative? Like how do you evaluate someone's comment as completely just not worth considering because it's doubly negative? It's coming from a place where there's really no positive construction, and then
Oh yeah,
someone who comes along and says, maybe you should,
yeah. There's positive and negative. It's interesting. Back when I was that's a great point, actually. Back when I was first starting, negative would have greatly affected me. Now that's what I barely notice at all, and that doesn't matter. But now when someone like comments and they're positive in one sense and then negative in another sense, that's more real, because that person's being dead serious, and that person's coming from a place where they want to engage with your work. And on one hand, you want to be like, it's art, I can do whatever I want in art or whatever. On the other hand, you got to be like, well, you do have to be able to, in order to grow, you have to be able to evaluate stuff, and if a bunch of people are saying something similar, maybe you should take steps to correct whatever it is that they were talking about. I actually appreciate constructive criticism a lot.
Sure.
More than I used to.
Oh yeah, well look, so there's constructive, there's deconstructive, and then there's destructive.
Right? That's a good way of putting it.
So you've got someone who's going to say something that's a positive criticism. There's somebody who's going to break down what you've done in a way to bring it about to have construction. They want you to rebuild. And then there's a person that has none of that in their mind at all. They just want to tear down
just a
everything.
wrecking ball.
Yeah.
Deconstruction is really fun. That might be one of my favorite type of things in the world, because I love doing that in real life. Like, not necessarily for the purpose of criticism, but just analysis and deconstruction of media in general is one of my... I love that. I love other people who do that. I watch video essays about movies that I love all the time, going into like the themes and the metaphors and what everyone was intending with it, and what the hidden things that you didn't notice. Same with music, same with books, same with pretty much any form of media. And I love engaging with media on that level where you're analyzing it to the point where you can get the most value that you can as a person out of it, and understand it on as deep a level as you really can without being its creator, And then when I see some comment that's like 3 or 4 paragraphs long of someone deconstructing or analyzing the lyrics and the musical structure of a song that I make, it's like it's come full circle, and it's really special and cool and crazy.
Okay, so what I did this when you released your album and I listened to it for the first time, I made a comment that something in...
You may ask yourself, well, why am I still here?
Reminiscent of the Talking Heads.
Oh no, that was very, very intentional.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
yes.
Okay. Now, did anybody else make that comment? Because as soon as it happened, I stopped your track, and I think I put the timestamp in and went, "This is completely like, there's no way this can't be a nod, right? You're tipping your hat."
It was almost past a nod. I wouldn't call it like it's that track. What's the name of that track? It's called 2031 Another Odyssey, something like that.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
okay.
Odyssey. You're right. Yeah, it was Odyssey. Yeah.
So, yeah, there were probably 5 or 6 other people that have commented or reached out to me to ask me if that song had anything to do with Once in a Lifetime. And yes, it's like the very first line of the song is you may find yourself.
Yeah.
Only this is like super depressing and messed up, and it's like a post-apocalyptic and almost like a cult thing, like they're creating a cult where one body, one mind thing, but the actual lyrics were multiple times very almost a rip-off. I wouldn't call it that, because that it is intended to be a reference, but I really like that song. I actually didn't expect people to like that one, but so far I've had multiple people tell me that's their favorite song.
Yeah. Not that the other ones weren't enjoyable. That one, for me, I think that one was the step up. Even before it got to that lyric.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Because that one's a little that one's a little outside the box for me. That one was more, that one was a little more synthesized. I don't know if that was all keyboard, I think. You know, there's like this really industrial sounding drum thing. Then there's like a pulse beat thing that's almost like sounds like a dance song. Then there's this synthesizer thing kind of doing that might have been a guitar. I don't remember. There might have been both an electric guitar and a synthesizer in there. And then, oh, okay, that song was really fun to record. I discovered something that I'd never known about. This editing software is expansive. Like, I still find new stuff in it all the time. There's so many functions and so many things to do in it. But when I was recording that song, I discovered this thing where it like looped. So where you could record for one measure of time, and then it would cut off the recording. So you'd have this block of the recording. Then in the space, the next row beneath it, it would start recording again with the other thing playing. And then it would keep doing it. It would keep looping. And so using that, I was able to simulate the sound of like a chorus of people singing One Body, One Mind over and over and over again by just slightly altering my voice. Like I did like a nasal thing. I did like shouting off in different directions. I did high pitched like, oh,
okay, you know what? Let me stop you real quick, because today when I was listening through your entire album, there was a part where a woman's voice came in.
Mm-hmm.
Who was that?
That's my mom. That was very.
I was like, I gotta ask him about who is that.
That was very spontaneous. I had the lyric and I was gonna say it, or I thought about like seeing if I could find maybe one of my friends, but I know like I have a few acquaintances in the industry. I was gonna like ask some actor person maybe if they would want to record a line for it, but also was like, that's kind of weird. I don't know. I thought about like maybe paying someone to do it, but then my mom like came downstairs for whatever reason while I was recording, and I asked her to
Daniel,
listen.
It's time for dinner.
Yeah. Actually, no, it was probably more like, Daniel, why the hell are you still awake? It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and she just finished whatever show she was watching.
You're like, why are you awake 3 a.m.?
Yeah, she came downstairs, and I was like, you want to help with something really quick? And she just said it. She said it like 5 different ways, and I ended up using the first take, I think. Like, we did one take where she was very like monotone kind of, and then every other time there was more inflection on her voice, but then listening to it back, it worked better just being the kind of just, you have been here before thing.
Yeah. I loved it. It was great.
And then put a bunch of reverb on it and EQ it, and it just sounds almost ghostly and ethereal and weird, and it plants this... the way that lyric works within the rest of the context of the album is like the apocalypse is happening, but it's happened before. Ooh, you know, you have been here before. The Matrix. It's all. Everything's a lie. Yeah. Anyway, it's a fun song. That was fun to make. The whole thing was cool. Also, the vocal delivery was fun too, because I was like trying to channel both David and I don't remember the name of the guy, the lead singer from the band Cake. I was trying to do a little bit of that too, kind of his like sarcastic.
You know what? You know what's funny? I wonder if that's the same track, because in one of your tracks again today, I was listening to the entire album. I was like, this is totally Cake.
Oh,
so I'm gonna have to go back.
The dawn of new millennia, rising from the ashes, and you will be investing in all of our wares. My lifestyle is yours, your lifestyle is mine. In everything I see, one body and one mind.
I was like, that's totally a Cake. This totally sounds like Cake.
Yeah, that was yeah. It's probably the same song. That was also intentional. And it wasn't originally like that. I was just like messing around, and I did a take where I was kind of doing this sarcastic and a little bit like, how does, the way Cake does it, how can you afford your rock and roll life? Yeah, so it's kind of that style, and it worked very well, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine playing it live, but like if I did, and if I had like a band,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
where I didn't have to like be encumbered by like an instrument at the time. So for that song, there's a band playing the song, and I can like go up to the crowd and be like, "You will be investing in all of our way." It'd be fun. I'm excited to see how far I can go with this um, music stuff. Like it's very fun. I really enjoy doing it. The amount of support that it has gained so far has absolutely been blowing my mind. Um, and like, I thought that the decision to keep my stuff currently exclusive to like Bandcamp and YouTube would end up being like detrimental and kind of risky. But so far, it's paid off and worked. And the fact that I'm starting to like get gigs is incredible. I still think I have a lot to improve on, a lot to learn, especially about playing live music. But I'm excited to go on the journey, and we'll see how far it goes.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
anyway,
Well, when I first, I think, messaged you on Discord a while ago, it was
Yeah.
I think it was your first album, and I remember listening to the album, and I remember thinking I would love to know what your process is, because there are certain things in your writing that I think, wow, where did that come from? Like, where did that start? What was that context? And even in this album as well. So we can start from there and just say, how do you go through your process?
Oh boy, that's an interesting, yeah. So, I guess the first thing to say is that there's no one single process. I know that there's been times where I've sat down with the intention to write a song, without any previous ideas or whatever. I'll be like, all right, especially if I'm making an album, like if have the intention to complete a record, and I have normally I'd like outline stuff beforehand, like I get an idea of what I want the themes of everything to be, what concepts and stuff I want to explore with the songs, and how everything ties together. Because I'm very into concept stuff. I love it when I'm listening to an album of music and it rewards me for paying attention, and like the desire to go deeper will always be like satisfied by it. Like I don't know, Pink Floyd's a off the cuff example of a band where like you listen to an album and there's so many layers to the album, everything flows together, all the stuff fits into the same thematic idea, and yeah, stuff like that inspires me so much. So yeah, when I go to record stuff, normally I'm trying to record for an album, and everything needs to fit into the context of the album. That's not always the case. Lightning in a Bottle, with the exception of that second half, just the first half of just the acoustic bit, that was done separately. That was just an idea, and that's the other process I was going to mention. Is sometimes, and this has happened more and more as I've gotten more in tune with looking at the world through the lens of finding further meaning, looking deeper, and almost making things more dramatic or melodramatic. As time has gone on, and as I've almost trained my art, for lack of a better word, this is gonna sound pretentious as hell, but as I've trained my artistic third eye, I've had more and more moments where an idea or a phrase or whatever just pops into my head, or something happens, or I see something happen, and I think about it a certain way and connect like some dots together about the way people seem to communicate around something, or the way an event seems to play out, or whatever. It could be anything. And that sets a spark that starts a fire, and then you have to
Okay,
You
so
have to put it
let me
out.
stop you real quick, because that could be almost a complete fabrication, where you could
Yes.
write a song that has no semblance to reality at all,
Uh,
or right, or you could actually be writing from some place within your own experience of existential crisis, where you're actually like grieving or celebrating or contemplating. So that's an interesting. So that's part of where my question was: okay, is he writing as an imaginative artist right now, or is he writing out of angst of of love, of forlorn, of being torn? So even in your current album, um, how do you put it? Are we're driving to the edge? Are we moving too fast? Like, is that just a commonplace teenage? Everybody feels this way. I'm just gonna say this, or was
oh
that
no.
where right?
That was so that song. Yeah, that song has changed a lot over time. It originally had another verse, and the kind of weird section where there's just like yelling and talking or whatever, that wasn't there originally. The more dissonant chord was in the original version, but it was like less, I think. It wasn't as prominent. Um, but yeah, I actually wrote that song for my girlfriend at the time when we were together, because we were talking about songwriting, and just like I was telling her about some of the stuff I was working on. Yeah, I wanted to write a song for her, and I did, and that was it. At the time, I kind of had this self-fulfilling prophecy almost of, this is going too fast, like I kind of see where this is going. This is not going to turn out great, because it's going to be very difficult to communicate when there's such a what's the best way to put this, there's such a difference, I guess, in expectations for what the individual people were looking for. So obviously it just wasn't the right thing at the right time. Yeah, at the end of the day, the song is about, we're moving too fast, and we need to slow down. But at the same time, this is like fun, and it's exciting, and this is like, this seems like a new thing, right? Um, but yeah, like I said, there was a whole verse, like a long verse, that ended up getting cut out and replaced with weird dissonant sounding stuff, with just me saying, I don't
Did
know what I
you
want thing.
did you feel like that dissonance that you inserted was a an auditory representation of what the verse was that you cut out?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, that was the, yes. Wow, good job. That was the exact kind of intent. And instead of saying all of the very specific and almost oversharing lyrics that were there originally, I just kind of summed them up with, I'm afraid this isn't gonna work.
It's like, what are some ideas that you're working through?
Um, well, originally I had a idea for a trio of albums, that all kind of went together, that were about, they're really about me, but they're a slightly exaggerated thing. Like they're about this character almost, that I was originally going to make a web series about, and only ever made one episode. I still intend to do more. I still have scripts for more, but I just haven't had time or resources to do it the way I want to do it yet.
Is this video or music?
This is music. This third, or the web series was video, but the first album was Mania Machinations. The second one was Paper Skies. The sighting was a bit of a detour. The next one, I actually don't remember what the next one has a working title, which I guess I won't even reveal right now. But yeah, I've got, let me, is it right over here? It's this book, which you might have seen in some of the videos for the sighting and in some of the imagery, the pictures, all of my notes for this next album are in here, and I've recorded like 4 or 5 songs for this already, and those were recorded at Diamond Studios, and I kind of want to record the whole thing there, so I'm just waiting till I have the resources and ability to go back, because you know they are very affordable for a music studio, but it's still very affordable is still kind of outside my range. You know, we'll see if I can't fix that eventually, but currently.
So let's go back to your second album, and
Yeah.
then you said that the sighting was a bit of a hiatus, so to speak. So were the first
Sure.
were the first 2 a part of the trilogy that you're talking
Yes.
about? Okay.
Yes, sir.
What's because I'm not I haven't thought about it in this way. What is the theme what's the thread for those first 2 albums that would then lead to a third?
So the first album is all right. The first album is kind of setting the scene and setting up I'm thinking of it in an Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 type of way of looking at it. The first thing sets up a lot of stuff. And like I said, a lot of this project is very much a vain project. Like, again, it's a character, but it's pretty much just me, you know? Like, most of the lyrics are very personal. A lot of the things I'm describing or talking about are real, or at least the metaphors I'm using are are metaphorical for real things that happened. And the first album, you know, you have a person who's trying to work through their own issues using art as almost a form of therapy. That was the majority of the theme of the first album. The second one was a little bit more expansive in that, oh yeah, and at the end of the first album, he comes to an epiphany. Like at the very end, the last track, which is like 14 minutes long, it's this big crazy thing where he kind of breaks past all of this old stuff, where we're putting all this stuff down on paper and purging it, getting rid of it, and moving past it and moving on to greater things. You know, any issues with different aspects of life or whatever is out. We're gonna almost we're gonna kind of set a blueprint out for the future. We're gonna talk about how art affects us in different ways. You know, like a song like "Go to Bed" is very much about the artistic process, I guess. My head is on fire and I cannot sleep. I'm gonna stay up all night and keep on writing. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Exactly. I remember when I first uploaded that video, and I still get comments from people telling me that it's that, where it's just like the clock, and then every other comment will be someone saying it's about acid. So it's interesting to see how many people have different interpretations of that song, where I think they said it was about writing a song in the middle of the night. So, you know, I guess that's probably the correct one, but people can interpret it however they want. The second album is a lot more expansive. It's kind of this. The second album is all about illusion, really. It's about, I built this character and now I'm breaking them down almost. In the first half of the album is all fabrication, pretty much. Most of the first half of it is me thinking about what's the type of life that I wish I was able to lead at this point in my life. You know, like the song starts with the first song's Paper Skies. You know, the main person's like, obviously there's still angst there, and there's still like conflict that I'm adding to it, but the general framing of the conflict is the life that I wish I was able to lead, with a song like Semiramis being, all right, I'm getting in a car or a taxi or whatever. I'm heading from the hotel to the show. I'm going to play for 5 people tonight, and I'm going to thank God that I have them. Eventually, you will get sick of me, but thanks for coming out anyway. You know, and then closer to the end, it's like, I look at these like celebrity people. A sense of style is all you care about. Your inner thoughts are within, not without. I used to think you all were shallow, realized I'm just hollow. You know, this like kind of depressing epiphany type thing. But then near the end, I flip it and it's like, I'm gonna kind of, because what I want to do with my life, or you know, right now, what I want to do with my life, what I want to do with my career, I guess, is I love independent music. I love art. I love artists. It's such a incredibly powerful form of communication, and such an interesting form of communication is media, I guess. And you know, when I meet these passionate, ambitious people who just don't have like the resources that some bigger name people have, like when I see these people with all this talent and all these ideas and all this ambition, and then you see that the show that's on TV with a bunch of views is freaking the Kardashians or something. It's like, yeah, long live the indie scene, you know, long live punk ideology, long live progressive ideology, long live experimental ideology. You know, that's amazing. That's awesome. And I want to involve myself in it. I want to help other people, and I want to kind of rise. You know, we're all going to rise together. So at the end, it's, if we ever make it to the stars, we're going to tear them down. Art's no longer art. It's manufactured and isolated. Yeah, it's...
So what is what is art? What is truth? So one of the things that I tend to rail against myself, and I remember struggling through this back in the 90s when postmodernism was kind of a buzzword, where you could completely almost disassociate the author's writing and interpret it your own way. I always had a problem with that. I always thought that that wasn't true to truth. That is, you, Daniel, if you write a song, that song comes from a certain place that you're trying to express either your experience, your thoughts, your process, and then for someone else to come along and say, you know, it's almost like looking at a portrait or a painting and noticing the colors, and someone else is looking at it and they're noticing the perspective, right? So there's perspective and then there's colors, but the artist was doing both. You know, so how do you think the relationship should be handled by those who interpret what you put out, interpret what you didn't intend?
That's a very good question that has that's almost beyond me. It has multiple, in my opinion, it has multiple different answers depending on the context, really. There's no one perfect solution, I don't think. And I think any answer I give will eventually lead to some form of hypocrisy, but I'm gonna try anyway. I personally don't have a huge problem with people interpreting things their own way, especially when like let me try to think of an example. Like, let's say an artist writes a song about a parent passing away, and for them it was their father passing away. That's what they wrote. They wrote a song that was a very emotionally impactful song, very personal song about their dad dying. And then someone else hears that song and they listen to it and they hear the words and they interpret it, or they relate it to their own best friend passing away. It's not their dad, it's some other person or some other form of loss that they've had in their life. I don't see any problem with that. And I think that that's actually one of the beautiful things about art, is that it can mean different things to different people and even grow beyond what the original artist intended. At the same time, I think it's important to know what the artist intended, you know? Like, maybe you have a different opinion or perspective on it, but the artist is the one who like made the thing. So like, man, I think of multiple examples, but they're all like mildly political. Let me think. Doesn't Bruce Springsteen have a song that's like critical of the U.S., but then like there are people who like take it to be a patriotic
born
song.
in the USA.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay. Let me phrase it like that. All right. So there's some people who take it to be like a very patriotic song, even though it's not really intended to be that way. When art does that, it's a little weirder. You know, it's a slightly stranger ground to go on.
Yeah.
You know, that's when the being able to interpret it however you want kind of has consequences, and yeah. So again, and that's one example. There's other ones that are like Time is a great example of a song where like I understand the song, you know, like I understand the point that it's getting across, but I'm not like at a point yet where like I know that in 20 years that song will be more impactful to me, you know, like no matter what I do, even if I achieved everything I could possibly want to achieve. What's the poem? The Road Not Taken, or just the concept of how like regret works. Like no matter what you do, you will wonder what would have happened if you'd done the other thing or something different. You know, Time captures that feeling of slipping away the moments that make up a dull day, fritter and waste your hours in an offhand way, and then what? Lying in the sunshine, staying home to watch the rain. You are young, and time is long. There's time to kill today. And then one day you find 10 years have got behind you. No one showed you when to run. You missed the starting gun.
Man, yeah.
So powerful.
That line was just crazy amazing. Which is, again, so there's an aspect in which that's where my initial impetus was the catalyst for me to ask you, like, where, because as a 50-year-old, I listen to some of the songs that you make that talk about where you're at asking the questions, and I think, how can this kid be asking these questions? Like, what has he experienced? And then, so when you think about even Dark Side of the Moon and Pink Floyd, these guys were in their late 20s, maybe.
That's true. Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm thinking, man, these guys were only in their late, but yet they write such a prolifically, just like one of the most profound, existential, you know, just massive. It's just deep. It's crazy. And then
the Dark Side of the Moon is insane.
It's amazing. You know what? What's interesting, Daniel, is I've got a 17-year-old son, and I bought the album for him 2 years ago, and he still hasn't listened to it. So I'm just waiting, right? It's going to be all syncopatic. It's going to be just all synchronicity. He's going to listen. He's going to listen to it at the right time, and he's going to think, "Wow, I don't know." But yeah. And then The Great Gig in the Sky. The Great Gig in the Sky has absolutely no lyrics.
It's got the guy talking for like 2 seconds, but then the vocalization on that song. Yeah. Oh my god, it's so raw. And like they were originally gonna put lyrics in that. Yeah. Like she was originally gonna have lyrics, but then they like did a take where she's just like, what, I don't even know what that's called. Ad-libbing? I don't know. It's not scatting. Just improvising. Say it's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, I think we can probably just kind of wrap this up right now. I really just wanted to touch base with you again and follow up with our previous interview. I've enjoyed everything that you've been expressing. Not all of it resonates with me, but a lot of it does. And, I think I try to put out as many positive comments as I can with things that you put out. And the one thing that I do appreciate is your vulnerability in terms of just simply expressing who you are and making it public for others to find a connection.
And I think that's what draws me to all of my favorite artists. Like that's all, like even if I don't agree with like anything that they're saying, when they are very obviously writing from a place of how do I put this? When they are very obviously writing from the heart, from a place of sincerity, that always resonates with me,
Right.
almost no matter what it is. Yeah. And so when I go to write music, that's what I want to be. I'm so glad that you said that, because that's what I'm going for, man. Like I've now been trying to engage with the community of people who are making music right now, like people who have 10 monthly listeners on Spotify, or people who have 100 subscribers on YouTube or whatever, and are trying to make music. And one thing that I see a lot is people making stuff that sounds really, really like pretty, or like almost perfect sounding, probably using a keyboard or a synthesizer, or like even there's lots of sites now or places where you can just like buy tracks and then like just put lyrics on top of them or whatever. So I've seen some people do that, and they're a lot of the time the lyrics or the style of thing that they're doing is very, very vague, and I find that ugliness or rawness or vulnerability is way more impactful. So when I go to make something, I don't really care if it sounds perfect or not. It can sound ugly or raw or like it was recorded in a basement, because it was. But as long as I'm able to convey something or put some form of emotional content into what I'm doing, then for me it was worth it. And then anytime I play it live, I connect with it. And then I think that people, or at least people who are like me, will appreciate it, and that's all I can hope for. But anyway, thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so thankful that I was in a place, as a truck driver over the road all week long. When the weekend comes, a lot of times I'm just like,
sure,
I do not want to do anything. So I got back today and just had the vibe. And I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago I contacted you and said, hey, are you around? So I had the muse at that moment, but you weren't around. Today you were, so it all worked out. So Daniel Profeta, thanks so much for being another part of an exciting adventure here on Red Hen Radio, where we talk about content with their creators.
And yeah, I'm really glad we got to talk again.
Yeah, me too.
Like I really enjoyed our last conversation. Now it's been almost 2 years, and it's great talking with you again.
You too, Daniel. You too. All right. So what I'll do is when I'm able to, I'll go back. I'll probably cut out all of the